Thanks for joining us on the program today. I'm Amarachi Ubani. And thankfully, a ceasefire has been agreed between the Israeli military and Palestinian militants in Gaza. And it's holding up as far as we know. But think about the scores of people who've lost their lives and both sides trying to prove their point. We'll have more on how the ceasefire is holding up in a bit. But this week, interesting things have happened here in Nigeria. As regards security, Boko Haram leader Abubakar Shekau was rumored to have died while trying to blow himself up as ISWAP confronted him, demanding he gives up leadership of the group and forcing his members to do same. Later, there were reports that Shekau did not die, but was badly hurt. The Nigerian military says it is investigating claims of Shekau's death. Speaking of the military, we do have to salute the memories of the 11 Army officers, including the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Ibrahim Atahiro, who paid the ultimate price on Friday evening as they tried to land their plane in Kaduna. The officers were buried on Saturday afternoon in the presence of family members, top officials of the Nigerian military, and top government officials. Indeed, nothing can be done to bring back these ones, but we desperately pray for comfort for the families of the soldiers whose pain and grief is incomparable at this time. In case you missed it this week, President Muhammadu Buhari attended the France-Africa Summit in Paris, alongside some 30 African and European heads of state, as well as the heads of global finance institutions like the International Monetary Fund. During the summit, President Emmanuel Macron said leaders had agreed to work towards persuading rich nations by October to reallocate $100 billion in IMF special drawing rights monetary reserves to African states, saying impoverished African economies must not be left behind in the post-pandemic economic recovery, and substantial financial packages needed to provide much-needed economic stimulus. President Buhari held sideline meetings with the chief executives of Total, Airbus, Dassault Systems, General Engineering, and Donaflex Automotive. They called on investors to explore Nigeria's vast human and natural resources with an assurance that fiscal policies will be more favorable, predictable, and measurably tilted towards creating harmonious business environment for them. As his visit to Paris drew to a close, President Buhari met with the Nigerian community in Paris. Also, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission have launched the Nigeria Diaspora Policy to promote and harness resources and capacity of Nigerians in the diaspora for growth and development of Nigeria. The Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Zubairu Dada, who launched the policy at the third summit of the state's Diaspora Focal Point Officers and Standing Committee on Diaspora Matters, says the policy will engage, enable, and empower Nigerians in the diaspora as change agents for the country's development. NIDCOM Chairman Abike Dabiri Erewa, represented by Secretary to the Commission, Engineer Dr. Sule Yakubu Basi, said the Commission will ensure that an enabling environment is provided for exchange of ideas to encourage synergies and collaboration among state diaspora focal point officers to promote policy consistency and coherence, with an overall objective of harnessing the potentials of Nigerian diaspora for national development.
More than 48 hours since the ceasefire was announced and it came into force, tens of thousands of locals living in the Gaza Strip took to the streets to celebrate the end of 11 days of tit-for-tat trade of fire. Over the past 11 days of tension between Israel and Hamas-led militant groups in the Gaza Strip, Israeli fighter jets carried out hundreds of airstrikes on the Gaza Strip, and the militants fired hundreds of rockets at Israel. Israel says 11 Israelis were killed and more than 100 injured by the rockets fired from the Gaza Strip at towns and cities in central and southern Israel. At least 243 Palestinians were killed in the fighting, including 66 children and 1,910 others injured. But there was a lot of damage to infrastructure on the Palestinian side. At least 1,800 housing units were destroyed by Israeli rockets, while some 16,800 more housing units were partially damaged and more than 120,000 Palestinians displaced from their homes. Many felt delighted the fighting was over. Some recalled the horrible event and how they started hugging each other and thanking and praying to God for their safety. And others still feel the fear from those days of the fighting. The UN, which had participated in the ceasefire agreement, sent their top official in the region to assess the damage caused. The UN's Deputy Special Coordinator for the Middle East peace process, Lynn Hastings, was in Gaza on Saturday.
The way the system works, the humanitarian community works, is that the UN agencies and the NGOs, both Palestinian and international NGOs, will come together and will prioritize what the needs are. There are many needs, obviously, in a situation like this. Everything from shelter, healthcare, especially during COVID. We're going to go and see the center that was damaged, the laboratory that was damaged for COVID as well. Food needs, it's really across the board here. And of course, again, in a time when the health system was struggling under the impact and weight of COVID.
ليست كما كانت قبلها.
Both Hamas and Israelis claimed victory over the conflict. On Friday, Hamas chief Ismail Haniyeh, during a televised speech, called the victory a strategic one because the stage that comes after the Battle of Sword of Jerusalem is not like it was before. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said also in a televised speech that the 11-day-long Israeli operation had hurt the ability of Hamas to launch missiles at Israel. In the meantime, pro-Palestinian protests continue to hold globally.
Palestine will be free! From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free!
This week, we're featuring a special interview with the External Relations Officer of the UN Refugee Agency, the UNHCR, Mr. Roland Schonbauer. Now, according to the agency, over 3.2 million people are displaced in Nigeria, including over 2.9 million internally displaced persons in northeast Nigeria. Over 684,000 IDPs in Cameroon, Chad and Niger, and 304,000 refugees in the 4 countries. A major cause of the refugee situation and displacements are insecurity, which has persisted for more than 10 years. A while ago, I sat with Mr. Schonbauer, who has recently taken the role as External Relations Officer, to talk about the true situation of things at the refugee and IDP camps. Joining me now is UNHCR Senior External Relations Officer, Mr. Roland Schonbauer. Welcome to Diplomatic Channel. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
You've been in Nigeria since October 2020. How are you finding the country so far?
I really like Nigeria. It's a diverse country with a very open population, also open to receiving refugees, as we see in the south, where the Cameroonians keep on trickling in. It's also a country that is seeing a lot of violence and displacement, not only from outside into Nigeria, but also inside Nigeria. 2.9 million Nigerian men, women and children are not living in their home. They have been displaced. So it's characterized by violence, by displacement, but also by generosity. When we look at how the government responds to the Cameroonians, 65,000 in the south, the government gives them access to health facilities alongside Nigerians. Refugee boys and girls can go to school alongside Nigerians. And refugees can work on their fields. If they can rent fields, they can build up little businesses. And this is not a given. If we compare to other countries, they have not gotten that far. They have not been so realistic in dealing with a refugee situation that is far from being over. So the conflict on the other side of the border continues, and we have to be realistic. And the government here is realistic. It gives the refugees the possibility to get back on their feet and to make a contribution to the Nigerian society and economy. This is commendable, and UNHCR supports the government not only with my words, but also financially by helping expand schools and health facilities so that refugees can be received alongside Nigerians.
I know the UNHCR focuses on refugees coming from Cameroon, but now the focus seems to be on the internally displaced persons. So you have visited some of those camps. What is your assessment there?
I've been to some of these IDP camps, like camps all over the world. It's only the last resort if there is no other way of receiving people. Luckily, in the case of the Cameroonians, the refugees, it's not really camps, it's settlements, and many live in the communities. For the IDPs, camps seem to be inevitable because of the insecurity around, but they are overcrowded. People are not having a lot of privacy, and they suffer from not being able to do what they used to do. They cannot go outside the camp a lot to work or to earn a living. So they depend both on the protection that UNHCR and others are providing, and they depend on aid and humanitarian assistance that different organizations are providing them in the camps. It's, again, not a sustainable situation, but the insecurity that prevails and that is even growing outside with attacks on IDP camps and on IDPs on the road makes it impossible to bring people out of camps in larger numbers.
With refugees, supplies are never enough. So how does the UNHCR help to meet these needs? Food, water, medicine, providing life as normal as possible for these people.
In Nigeria, like around the world, when it comes to internal displacement and the help for IDPs, the humanitarian community has a certain division of labor. In the case of Nigeria, the response is led by the Deputy Humanitarian Coordinator, and different organizations have different tasks and different what we call sectors or areas where they support. UNHCR leads on protection. So we try to give people access to justice if they are living in a camp, and so on and so forth. We also help with shelter. We rebuild shelters when they are damaged by non-state armed groups in their attacks. We help expand camps if need be. We also focus on non-food items such as jerry cans so that the IDPs can bring clean water, mats so that they have a place to sleep, and other non-food items, and we help with camp management. But for food, medicine, education, it's others that lead. But we also work with a network of protection action groups across the Northeast. These are people that work with these NGOs that work for us. So we have basically a network that helps us overcome this limited space of maneuver that we have due to insecurity. We cannot go everywhere in the Northeast. It's simply too dangerous. Only a living humanitarian is a good humanitarian. We cannot make a change, a difference in the lives of displaced people if we are killed. So there's quite a limitation of what we can do. But through these networks of protection action groups and with other organizations, we try to make a difference. We try to cope. And how is this possible again? With predictable and reliable donor support. This is not a given, but we are pleased that we have the US government and the US people as reliable partner in this. We just recently also got support from France, and with countries like those that I mentioned, but also Japan, we can carry out some of the protection work. But yes, we need more, and we are glad also that Nigerians have started helping Nigerians through our IDP, Refugee and Zakat Fund.
My conversation with Mr. Sean Bauer continues in a moment. Please stay with us. 32 camps in Nigeria tells you, the situation of and how badly the security challenge is in the country. For some, especially children, who are among the most vulnerable groups, women and children, but children especially, what is the plan, that the UNHCR has for helping them to, have life as normal as possible, either in the camps or, as they transition back to normal life, back to, where they're coming from?
Let me take you one step back. When it comes to IDPs, they're in the first place Nigerian citizens. So the first institution to look after them is the Nigerian government. But obviously we all know that it is challenging in the Northeast, and that's why we as humanitarian community support the government in responding to the needs of the IDPs and in helping them realize their rights. And yes, children have a right to education, like everybody else. For instance, what does UNHCR contribute? First of all, we help assess their needs. We ask them from the first-hand perspective, what do you need? How do you do this? We organize what we call focus group discussions. So we bring together boys and have them discuss their needs for our assessment. We can think what is ideal for them, but let's hear their masters' voices. The same for girls. They may not say what they need if they are put together with a large crowd. So that's why we have these focus group discussions for the needs assessment. Then we do vulnerability assessments. We make sure that as we don't have enough to give, as you rightly pointed out, we need to prioritize what we give. For this, vulnerability assessment helps us so that we can prioritize, for instance, families where children have lost their father, so that the mother is left with all the tasks that parents usually have, and in displacement it's even a more distressing role they have to play. So there we can prioritize orphans or people, children that don't have a father. Other activities that we have so-called safe spaces for women and children inside camps. So these are fenced areas where children have peace and quiet to play, because it's not a given to play if you are packed together with others.
Do you have this in all the camps or in most of the camps in Nigeria?
I wished we would have it in all the camps, but we are expanding these safe spaces. Also with the help of the government and people of Japan, we are just about to build one more. And in these spaces, we also have dedicated rooms for survivors of gender-based violence. So if someone is referred to us and we help with professional help, it's not for everybody to help a survivor of sexual violence, but with expert help, psychosocial medical care, they can spend the night in peace and quiet in a place behind the fence where we can make sure they are protected, which is at the heart of what we do.
And speaking about safe places and security in the camps, physical presence of security operatives is also important, especially at these camps. And I'm sure that you're concerned at UNHCR and other UN agencies and other non-governmental organizations are concerned about the protection of staff in these places, in these camps. How does the UNHCR go about protecting its own staff and other volunteers who are at these camps?
We have our security experts that are in touch with the security authorities in the country, and we make assessments and we continuously review our security measures, be it armored vehicles for the way to the camps, be it that we have to withdraw from a camp if there is an incident building up. And if you remember the attack on Dikwa, where there was also a bunker where humanitarian organizations were working or protecting themselves inside, and even the bunker was under siege by one of the non-state armed groups. In this area, we have a partner organization working for us. But luckily, through our information flow, we ensured that our partners could flee in time before the bunker fell under siege. And luckily, the bunker was not broken, and the humanitarians in that case could be saved.
Do you feel there's enough security presence in these camps?
it cannot be if attacks reach until the very people that are there for the very purpose of protection. The camps are not there because there's no housing outside. They are there because it's so insecure outside. So they are meant to be kind of a safe haven or an island of security. And as we know, some of the attacks by non-state armed groups have reached and even hurt and killed people that used to live in camps, either inside the camps or when they were on the road nearby. So that's obviously not enough, but it's not for UNHCR to give advice on security matters. The pertinent authorities are definitely aware of the challenge, and they have to play their role like everybody else.
Yeah, and I know that the UNHCR is concerned particularly about these 65,000 people who were recently displaced in the northeast because of a series of attacks by armed groups on Damasak town. I believe that's in Yobe State. And unfortunately, there are more people being displaced by these non-state armed groups and their activities. Are you concerned, that it really doesn't seem to be abating, and there's no the resettlement of these internally displaced persons are not going on as fast as they should be? I mean, because if the security forces are doing their best, then people should be able to go back to where they're coming from. But you find that more people are being added to the camps than are leaving the camps.
So let me unpack this a bit. Yes, in Damasak we have seen massive displacement that hadn't been seen in many months. Up to 65,000 people fled from there. Most of them IDPs, fled to the bushes, fled even across the border into the Republic of Niger, where UNHCR is also looking after them. And some of them tried to return, and that's the sad situation, that people are displaced over and over again. They restart their lives in a camp, then they feel that's not enough, that life has in for them, so they look for a better place, a place with better food, where they can look after themselves. They try to go back where they came from. They find out there is no food, there is no perspective. They cannot go back to their field because it's too insecure around their village, and then they go back to the camp. So it's a cycle of displacement that is very, very concerning, and it's really important that the security issues are addressed. But again, I'm stating the obvious here.
And how is the UNHCR maneuvering the challenges that the coronavirus pandemic poses, to internally displaced persons, because you can't have social distancing in these camps? So that must be challenging, right?
It is challenging, and we are working with WHO and UNICEF on communicating the risks of the pandemic to both IDPs, but also the refugees in the south. And we are trying to make a contribution when we do our border monitoring for those that are in pendulum movements or that flee from Cameroon into Nigeria. So UNHCR and our partners, we are not only monitoring movements at the border, but we use this for temperature checks and for raising awareness about how to protect themselves. Yes, physical distancing is a challenge or impossible in camps, and we hope and pray that all the preventive measures prevent the worst.
Mr. Roland Schonbauer, thank you so much for speaking with me on Diplomatic Channel.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks again for joining us on the show this week. Don't be a stranger. Check out our other editions by going to the Channels TV website. Search Diplomatic Channel under Programs and keep up with other conversations. I'm Amarachi Obani. You can reach me using any of the addresses showing on your screen. I'll see you next time.